Welcome back to Virteva's Roadmap Rundown, the show where we talk through the latest updates, enhancements, and features coming soon to Microsoft 365. It's July 29th. I'm Scott Ludwan with Holly Peterson. On this week's edition of the Roadmap Rundown, we're talking about the blue screen heard around the world. Clipchamp is getting a background removal feature for video editing. Intelligent Recap is kind of coming to the new Outlook. We'll talk about that. Dynamic watermarking is headed to Microsoft Purview information protection labels. And we're saving the best for last year. You're finally going to be able to rename the general channel in Microsoft Teams. Before we get into the news for the week, though, we'd really appreciate it if you could take a moment to hit those like, subscribe, and share buttons to help our channel grow. Just in the last month, we've added over 100 new subscribers. So first off, thank you to everyone that subscribed. And for those that haven't, we need your help to get this news and announcements out to more people. All right. So the first one we have up here is, of course, the blue screen heard round the world. So unless you've been living under a rock for the last couple of weeks, I am sure that at some point you turned on your local news, you read on a blog, you saw it popping through a Teams feed that there was over, I think it was close to 9 million people. I think it was 8.5 million was the official number from Microsoft. Customers that were impacted by just endpoints erroring out and hitting a blue screen when they were trying to do a restart. Ultimately, it was diagnosed that this problem was a faulty system file update by the cybersecurity company called CrowdStrike. And, it impacted airlines. It impacted banks. You name it. If you had CrowdStrike on a system, you probably got hit by this. Right. 8.5 million sounds like it is a lot of machines, and it is. But I think at the end of the day, it was like less than 3% or something like that of the total Windows install point. And people are probably like, well, if it was such a big number, how could it be such a small percentage? And it's just because this affected, for the most part, enterprise or business level customers that were using this software.
And CrowdStrike is quite, I guess I would say it is used by some of the more secure or kind of like security required kind of companies. So airlines, city government, banks, hospitals. So this type of software was used by some of the most crucial services that everyone uses. So I would say for someone like me, I'm a training consultant, I don't have that system. I don't use CrowdStrike. So my machine wasn't affected, but we know of so many that were.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, so I had air travel in between the last show at the end of June and this show today. And last week, all my flights were Delta. I typically always fly Delta, and everything got pushed back, canceled. I'm still waiting on refunds. And I'm sure that there's hundreds and thousands of other customers and folks that were affected by the same thing. On the last show before we kind of took our midsummer break here, is we were talking about regulation around artificial intelligence and how there's maybe 5 companies out there that have so much market share out there of different products. And this is just one of those. This is a perfect example of that. Is a very large percentage of computers that are crucial to day-to-day business had CrowdStrike on them. And CrowdStrike regularly does these system file updates. And it's very silent in the background. No one notices anything. And this update, I don't believe in. I don't work for CrowdStrike, so I'm making some assumptions here, but it wasn't much different than a normal update. The problem is that somehow that system level file that has kernel access to the machine, and I won't get too in the depth, but kernel level operations are basically before you turn on your computer, your computer, your motherboard needs to know what order of operations it's going to boot everything up on. So it looks for boot drivers as part of those files. That sys file was there from CrowdStrike, and it had a null pointer in it, to my understanding. So when the system tried to boot itself and it couldn't find the right drivers to load, it just basically went, I don't know what to do, and just got stuck into a boot loop. So the update went out about 12 o'clock in the morning. It affected quite a lot of customers. CrowdStrike says that they caught it pretty early and stopped it from hitting more machines. So it doesn't sound like every machine that CrowdStrike manages was necessarily affected, though I would imagine that it was a very large amount of them. And once it hit that, the only way to fix this, unfortunately, was you needed physical access to the machine,
Mhm.
which we live in a very hybridized world now where almost everything is controlled remotely, or you needed a way to be able to get those machines to kind of boot into a Pixie or a pre-boot environment to be able
Mhm.
to correct the problem. So unfortunately, because of how spread out we are, how diverse, how hybrid everything is now, and how managed IT, I
Mhm.
mean, there's a lot of examples of smaller businesses having an IT team and then outsourcing it to CrowdStrike and then not having those resources is
Right.
all those machines had to be touched. So I was walking to the airport on Thursday when I came back last week, and there
Mhm.
was still machines in the Buffalo International Niagara Airport that had blue screens on them, and they were the non-critical machines probably, but it
Right.
just goes to show how big of an impact and how long it takes to
Right.
fix that.
Right.
Like there was businesses down for days.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so long story short, I really wanted to just kind of highlight this. We were off on our midsummer break when all of this stuff happened. This would have made an excellent Let's Talk episode to kind of talk through everything that was happening. But Microsoft has issued tools in tandem with CrowdStrike
Yep.
to help fix these problems for customers that are affected. If you are still affected and you need assistance, you can reach out to Microsoft, CrowdStrike, or if you need some assistance, Virteva is happy to help provide that as well.
Mhm.
You can contact us through the normal methods of our Let's
Right.
Talk email
Right.
address. Moving forward, though, and for some background history on this, is Microsoft back in the 2000s with Vista tried to block access to the kernel level for third-party security programs such
Mhm.
as Norton and McAfee back in the day. Those companies went to the European Union and prevented Microsoft from blocking that level of access. Apple just in 2020 actually did this same thing as they blocked kernel level access on their machine so you couldn't get into the root of the machines and make those changes unless you
Right.
were the actual operating system owner.
Mhm.
And I bet you that this is going to be a very hot topic over the next 6 months where
Right.
Microsoft pushes back and tries to remove that kernel level access again from third party providers to
Yeah.
prevent something like this in the future. Because both CrowdStrike had a lot of egg on its face, but I think Microsoft, more than CrowdStrike, at least early on, had the most egg on their face because it was their blue screen that everyone was seeing.
Right. Right. That was probably the number one kind of misconception that I think a lot of people battled was, this is Microsoft's fault.
Yep.
No, this is CrowdStrike's fault. And honestly, I think understanding how kernel level access was sort of, kind of forced to be provided and things in the past is really interesting. So yeah, I could see there being a little bit more cooperation, really truly understanding what that means, what the impact of that is, and how the sort of the why behind why developers should not have access to those tools simply for these types of situations.
Yeah, I do think that the funniest part about all of this, and it really wasn't a laughing matter, but before this outage happened, CrowdStrike had on its website, it was like CrowdStrike security, and then under it, it said, Microsoft can't protect itself from itself. How can Microsoft protect you? And then, like 2 days after the update, the page was exactly the same, but that line was removed.
Yeah.
So I think that they kind of realized that as people were going to that website, this has done some major reputational damage to CrowdStrike.
Right. I mean, this is catastrophic. I mean, really, really, truly, I know that there was a lot of inconveniences, but there were some extremely critical services affected by this.
Yep,
911 centers all across the country were down. So it's really truly, the world runs on this technology. And so at
absolutely.
the same time, it really needs to be protected in order to have continuity of service for those things. Windows machines need to be able to boot
Yep.
first and foremost,
Yeah.
and that was really just truly, truly unfortunate.
I think depending on how the next 6 months go too, with if Microsoft does remove kernel access for third party security providers, and obviously those companies need to still be able to do business with
Mhm.
Microsoft. So the way those updates come through will be a bit different. But I think that customers that maybe have a business premium, an E3 and E5, they may start to look a little bit differently if they have CrowdStrike and those products already at maybe Defender is enough for what we need it for,
Right.
and maybe we won't have to worry about this in the future. I think that a big part of the conversation too is going to be how can one cybersecurity provider have that much control
Right.
over all of the infrastructure out there? So we're going to see some big changes come out of this over the
That
coming months.
and again, just even down at the individual service center level of, do you have a disaster recovery plan? You
Yep.
know, this will lay bare all of those things, and having continuity, having a disaster recovery plan is something that every business should have, regardless of, Microsoft, CrowdStrike, all of those things. So those are also, that's part of security. So these are, again, the most unfortunate, this is not a test type lesson for any business that thinks could never happen to us. Maybe it was CrowdStrike this time, but it could be something else that would
Yeah.
cause your systems to be offline. How are you going to recover from that? And those are things that I think we talk a lot about at Virteva, is having, a disaster recovery plan in place to make sure that you have continuity of your services, especially if they're critical.
Yep, absolutely. And never assume that it can't happen to you because that'll be
Exactly.
the first mistake you make. It will
Exact
happen
and
to
I think
everyone
that's
eventually.
that's like one of those things, we get reassurances from these groups all the time, right? How many nines of uptime they have, but
Yep.
it it when you see that it's really, they're so intertwined, you know, that
Mhm.
you really do, you have to plan for the worst, and it's
Yep.
never like a good thing, but someday maybe it will feel really good to move right into disaster recovery, a plan that you've put in place, tried and true, that you've done these types of drills or tests with your team. It's really important. So yeah, today was CrowdStrike. Can't predict what the next one will be, but we can almost at least bet that there's, something around the corner.
Yep, 100%. All right, so let's move on to the next one. So Microsoft Clipchamp is soon adding the ability to remove image backgrounds from videos. So this is going to be coming in late July and completing by mid-August. No admin access is required. So if your organization is already using Clipchamp today, you don't need to do anything. This is Message Center ID MC837084, roadmap ID 388485.
Mhm,
Coming soon to Microsoft Clipchamp, users will be able to make the background of an image transparent in their videos without sacrificing the original PNG JPEG quality.
mhm.
I haven't. So this is coming to all Clipchamp users, not premium. We've talked about this on the show before, as it felt like they were kind
Yes.
of paywalling Clipchamp a little bit, and
Yep.
they're not paywalling this. There are no screenshots of this. I haven't had a chance to play with it myself yet, but this
Mhm.
almost feels like it's kind of, so if you've ever used something like a Final Cut or an Adobe Premiere,
Yep.
this almost feels like it's kind of like a chroma key type feature, like
Oh, yeah.
green screen, take the image out. Depending on what AI is adding to this, maybe it does some things a little bit better or a little bit differently. Microsoft gives some after rollout suggestions of what you can do with it. So upload and improve images to add to videos with no additional software required. So think about making like your own
Right.
animated GIFs, but replace the background in marketing videos and images to help the product stand out, remove unwanted distractions. So that almost to me, as a video editor myself, is maybe you can mask out certain areas of the video that you don't
Yep.
want to show up. And then also the ability to remove image backgrounds and add text behind the subject. So
Right.
this is something that I've been seeing, I think it's CapCut do, and you can
Okay.
obviously do this in something like Premiere or Final Cut. It takes a little bit more
Mhm.
work, but like you could put like letters behind your head that were kind of obscured by the front of
Yep.
your head. It's a neat thing. I mean, I don't necessarily know from an enterprise or a business level perspective how often you're going to
Right.
be doing that, but if you want to do kind of like a neat new intro to a video, or you're really trying to just
Right.
put that one effect to grab people's attention, this is neat. And again, it doesn't come at any additional forced cost into a
Right.
premium license. So I'll be interested to play with this and see how it looks
Yeah.
down the
I
road here soon.
I think Clipchamp is one of those tools that To me, when I work with organizations and I work with groups of all sizes across all industries, one, step one, you need to know that you own Clipchamp. So if you have a
Yep.
Microsoft 365 license, you have access to Clipchamp. The second thing is, and I'm going to put a little shade on Microsoft for this. Previously, the ability to watch a video, maybe trim a video, was something that was readily available in Windows, in the web. This ability to edit and do good, have a good video editor was not a part of your license. It wasn't in Windows. And these were pieces of software that were being requested. So marketing departments, you're requesting, hey, we need Final Cut, or we need Premiere, we need these Camtasia. I mean, Scott and I could probably between us list a handful. These are can be quite costly licenses. They're often
Hmm.
individual, so you aren't getting, if one person in marketing wants it and then the other person wants it and the other again, I look at it as kind of pervasive, like Snagit. Oh my gosh. Snagit is one of the most viral types of license requests that I see in organizations. And I think video editing is similar. If you see
Yep.
one person can do something, then you're going to your manager and you're like, well, I want that too. So it's always a good moment to say, you own Clipchamp. And Microsoft is adding updates like this one to it, maybe not as frequently as something like Teams, but they are working on it. So if
Yep.
your marketing department is coming to you saying they need Premiere, or you're looking for ways to cut costs, have them do a side by side test. Maybe don't just immediately claw back some, license that you have out there, but you might own a great video editor and not even know it.
Yep. And a little bit of shameless self-promotion too. Earlier this year, I did a Learn Clipchamp in 15 minutes video. You can see that right up there at the top of
Yeah,
the
check
screen. I'll
it
put
out.
a clip in there for you. But that is actually one of the most viewed tech tip videos that I've put together this year on the channel. I think that we're closing in on 3,000 views. So people have been finding it very helpful. So
Yeah.
if you don't know a lot about Clipchamp or you want to explore it further, that video should definitely help you take the next steps in that journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Holly, the next one I'm going to let you take. I know you're very excited about this. I am as
Yes.
well.
All right. So our next update is for Microsoft Outlook. In fact, this is for new Microsoft Outlook, and that's the intelligent meeting recap integration. I'm going to put the word integration in finger quotes simply because, as Scott and I will get into this is sort of a quasi integration, if you will. And I am just looking for my message ID. This is C8. 35642, so MC 835642, roadmap ID 403099. So take a look, but essentially, and this is something that I have dealt with as a trainer for quite some time. So previously, if you wanted to view your intelligent meeting recap, whether you had a Copilot license, whether you have a Teams premium license, if you want to look at those AI notes, you need to open Teams, find your meeting invite in Teams, open it up, and go to the recap tab in order to look at it.
Mhm.
Now, in new Outlook, and I believe Outlook for the web, you are going to be able to go directly from your Outlook invite and click on the recap in your Outlook invite and be jumped over to the correct location in Teams. So, kind of a clarification. So, that's why I put integration in quotes. It really is just a hyperlink to the place
Yeah.
in Teams that you need to go to. However, I think this is a really good step in the right direction. I'm very excited about this because since the dawn of Teams meetings, I have had people that really do not use the Teams calendar. They insert their Teams meeting in Outlook. They operate from Outlook. They join their Teams meetings from Outlook. And the Teams calendar is this like never visited space for a lot of folks. When we do trainings on Teams Premium or even Copilot, I'm not kidding when I say some people open up the Teams calendar or look at a meeting invite in Teams for the first time and they're like, "Oh my gosh, there's so much stuff here." Yes,
Mhm.
yes, there is. But until that is available in your Outlook view, where are you going to go? You're going to go where your habit lives, and that's in Outlook. So here, my hope is that we're going to have more people clicking on that recap and going right to the recap tab in their Teams meeting in Teams and starting to explore a little bit more there as well. So, yep, you'll see that you can view your recap there and you can jump over into it in Teams.
Yeah, it's exciting to see that they are adding more of this functionality over to Outlook. What I would like to see is less integration and more it just exists there. You click it, it opens in the same spot. These are all these new apps. They're just web containers. It should theoretically be able to do
Right,
that. I think that this is just someone asked for it in the new Outlook so that they didn't have to bounce back and
right.
forth. They also just recently added loop components into the new Outlook as
Yep.
well, and those will automatically display. In fact, I was actually
Yes.
doing a demo of this last week when I was on site during our quarterly business review. Is
Yep.
they're adding more and more of this cool functionality. It showed up in OneNote too, by the way, not that
Yep.
long ago. Is all of these new cutting edge products are going to take us into this new hybrid feature,
Right.
are starting to become integrated, and it's going to bring us all together and make collaboration easier. So I'm excited for this. Again, it's an integration right now. It's not a full
Right.
on solution, but we're getting there.
Right.
And that's the first step.
So, just a reminder, this is not available in classic Outlook. So, if you are not using the new Outlook, I'm not going to push you there, but we're going to see a couple of things happening, probably more and more over the months to come. Updates and feature sets are going to be added to new Outlook, and they're going to be either held back or pretty slow rolled into classic Outlook for Windows. So if you like this, if it's one more drop in the bucket that helps you flip that switch to try out new Outlook, great. So that's something to just keep that in mind. The other thing is we're going to see, and I think Scott's right. I'm hoping because these are web, kind of web apps or iframe apps, that we're going to be able to see less and less of this division between the two. Because again, Outlook calendar and Teams calendar kind of started like this. They're two separate things. Now they're starting to blur a little bit more together. So my
Yep.
hope is that we have true cross functionality more and more throughout. And one of the things that I know, again, I know it's not on specifically, maybe we'll talk about this in a future update, but the ability to view a meeting attachments in Teams is going to be coming soon. Again, maybe we'll talk about that in the future. But again,
Yeah.
the
I
lines are
believe that
getting
that's in
blurred.
preview right now.
The
Because I
lines are getting blurred.
Yep,
Yeah,
lines are
that's
getting
cool.
blurred. I still think that one day you will be able to open up Outlook in the Teams client. To me, it seems like at least from a mail perspective, that would make
Right,
sense. It's not there yet. I think that people are not ready for that push yet,
right,
but I could see it happening sooner than later.
right.
Um, so just to recap on intelligent recap integration coming to Outlook, this will be available in mid-August to
Okay.
regular channel users, and it should be available for everyone by the beginning of September. Also, just a reminder, the new Outlook for Windows is generally available August 1st.
Yep,
So we are about to, we talked about it on the last show. We're getting closer and closer to that dot of general availability. And that's when that ticking clock begins. So
yep,
if
the
you haven't
12
started
12
looking at the new
months, yep,
Outlook yet, all the features are not there from Classic yet, but the window is going to start to close sooner than later as we move to general availability. So be
yep,
prepared.
yep,
Holly, have you ever thought to yourself that I have information protection labeling set on my documents, but I either have to manually flip it on or I have to have an E5 license to auto label it, and thought, well, this is great, but what do I do for if an employee decides that they want to, leak information? How do I identify that employee without having to dig through logs? Like, how do I react quickly? And Microsoft, I think, has an answer here, and it's not coming until later this year, but it is going into preview. And it is dynamic watermarking for Word, Excel, PowerPoint documents.
yep,
And I think that this is terrific. Like, this is a really neat feature. Again, it's coming a little bit later this year, but what you'll essentially be able to do, and you can test this in preview now,
mhm,
or at least early August, is you'll be able to create a new information protection policy label using Microsoft Purview to kind of flag the backgrounds of your documents, very similar that you can do today with Teams watermarking, where
Mhm.
if an employee goes in and that label applies itself, either they manually apply it or it auto applies based on
Yep.
different policies that you've set up, like it detects a social security number or sensitive information,
Yes.
is instead of just labeling it alone, it'll also just drop the user's email address all over
Mhm.
it. So if they try and take a screenshot of it or try and share it, you'll know exactly where that document came from.
Mhm.
I think that this is Microsoft's response to a problem that started back during the pandemic, where we started seeing some of these viral videos come out of Zoom meetings being recorded or Teams meetings leaking. And this is really taking it to the next level by adding it directly at the document level.
Right.
This is brand new. I literally just saw this right before we started the show today, and
Mhm.
I'll move over to the screenshot so that we can see it a little bit
Yep.
more in depth here. But this is going to be a game changer for, I think, Microsoft 365 customers that have the ability to create these labels. I'm
Mhm.
not sure in the documentation, because I just saw it right before we started the show, what license type this applies to. I'm trying to
Right.
see if I can see that here. I don't think that it says quite yet what license type it's going to be applied to. I get the feeling that it'll probably be applied to an E5 SKU, because
Mhm.
typically the really cool stuff is. But when it's in preview, that doesn't mean that you can't use it now. So when it's in
Right.
preview, you can go in, you can play with it, see what it looks like. I wouldn't recommend putting a label out there for every document environment, but you could test it on like a certain repository of files, see
Right.
what it looks like. What are your thoughts, Holly? I mean, I think that this is cool just from a technology perspective, but do you
Yeah.
think that this is useful for actually protecting customer data?
I think that there's a lot of specific types of groups that we work with. A good example would be manufacturers. You know, a lot of manufacturers that we work with traffic in things that we'll call trade secrets, things that are unique to their process, things that are unique to their products. And this is some of the most critical protected data that they work with. And they wouldn't want a trade secret. They wouldn't want to lose that. And if they did, they certainly would want to be able to kind of postmortem it and figure out what exactly happened. This is, I think, a key add to this. Another thing, like you said, customer data, customer financial data, company financial data, restricted account information, those sorts of things. We look at this as sort of like there's a preventative nature to it, right? Through education, saying if a document that's labeled leaves our there's data loss, it's stamped with your your account name all over it. The other thing is, like I said, there is sort of post-mortem kind of resolution aspect to it as well. I do think that I I guess that really what I'm excited for, just when I look at things like this happening, certain things like Copilot have really lit up customers wanting to use Purview. And some of it, the use of Purview is born out of this desire to block Copilot from indexing, building indexes of sensitive data and regurgitating it, through prompts. So this is really cool. But I think more customers are seeing what else they can do with Purview, how it's not just about Copilot. It really is about security and data loss and preventing data loss that I think the more people start to use Purview, whatever the entry point is, we're going to see a lot more innovation like this, and it's really exciting. So I think when I see something like this, I can see its unique uses, but I also, think if I know Microsoft, it's just there's more where this came from. So
Yep.
things that you wish you could do in your environment to protect and secure your most valuable data assets is like more and more innovation is going to be coming your way to secure that stuff using Purview. So if again, I'll even make the call out if you've been curious about Purview, if you've been curious about sensitivity labeling, it's certainly something that we at Virteva can help you with. And again, whatever that entry point, if it's, hey, I want to prevent Copilot from, indexing certain things in our environment, to I have a lot of trade secrets and sensitive data that I want to prevent, loss. It's a great tool for that, and this is just one aspect of an overall great tool.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, it is an amazing tool that provides you with technology answers to problems.
Hmm.
Procedurally, though,
Yeah.
talking about Copilot,
People.
procedurally, that's all about zero trust. Is you want to be limiting the access, especially with Copilot, that people have to certain files, certain locations,
Hmm.
etc. And that's done through proper permission management, which is a huge piece of zero trust. So
Definitely.
this will get you halfway there. Zero trust gets you the rest of the way there.
Right, right. Again, it's all layers of semi-permeable, the kind of layering the Swiss cheese all the right way to plug all
Yep.
sorts of different types of holes. But yeah, I agree. I think that you nailed it. It is a technology solution. There's still a lot of, the people aspects to that. There's still a lot of process aspects to it. And, again, we can help not only with the technology side, but of course from the training side, we can help as well.
So we got one left. Holly, another one close to my
Yeah.
heart, but I'm going to let you take this because you have been waiting for this for ages. And I think a lot of
Yes.
customers have as well.
Yes. So coming soon. So message center ID MC814583, roadmap ID 395931. Yes, it's finally here. Soon you will have the ability to rename the general channel. Now, I have spent, how long has Teams been around? 8 years?
Been around since I think 2017. If you
Oh my
want to call
gosh,
the early release of Teams,
so
actual
long.
Teams, it felt like it was just a lot of chat then.
But I have been telling people you cannot delete or rename the general channel for years. Why I just led a Teams training last week where I explained you can't rename the general channel. But yes, coming soon, you will be able to rename the general channel. Now, things like, can I delete the general channel? No, you
Nope.
cannot. But if you want to rename that channel so that it appears alphabetically in your channel list with all the rest of your channels, that you have a little bit more control over what that channel is called, it is coming your way. So, this is great news. I have been asked this question so many times. I look at this as maybe like this is one on the dartboard, right? I used to get asked, "Can I share a channel with just one person?" And for years and years, I'd say, "No, you can't. No, you can't. No, you can't." Until shared channels came along, and I was
Yep.
so happy. This is another one that I'm really happy to cross off the list. Yes, you can rename the general channel, and that'll be coming. Looks like starting to
Looks like
be
it's
rolled out
coming.
early August, which
Yep.
is upon us, to late September of this year. So watch for it. What are the implications, I think, for this is we often encounter brand new teams or brand new Teams users or combination that don't really have the need for a large set of channels. Maybe the general channel is all they really want to use. But of course, it's called general and they want to just call it something else under their team. And now you're going to be able to do that. For those people that are, wanting it to fit in with maybe a channel naming convention on your team, I have great news for you. You're going to be able to rename it to fit the bill. However, remember, the general channel is still special. It's got its own little specialness about it. So it'll never kind of fit in with all of your other standard channels. It's got a
Hmm.
couple additional features on it, but you will be able to rename it something other than general, which is pretty cool.
Yep.
So I'm really, honestly, really looking forward to ripping that little bullet point out of all of my trainings from once I think it generally available in all tenants. I will be pulling that out happily. So have fun. Just a reminder though, for those of you that are members of teams that are you can't wait to redo this. It may be restricted to the team owner. So check with your team owner before you go attempting to rename that general channel. They may be the ones that have the ability to do it, not you as just a standard member, but it could be a permission that's allowed
Yeah.
um, from your member settings.
Not a lot of information or screenshots on this one just yet. The news post is pretty thin, and I am one of those people who generally can't wait to play with this stuff. So if you saw me kind of like looking off screen
Yep.
over here, I was trying to rename a channel because I saw status for your org launched.
Yep.
Survey says that's not true because I can't rename it or figure it out at the moment. So I'm wondering
Right.
if maybe this has to be done at the team's admin level, or maybe it has to be done through PowerShell and it just
Right.
hasn't hit yet. But it definitely does not look like it has hit our tenant quite yet. But
Right.
when it does, that'll be a cool YouTube short to put out there,
Yeah.
right?
First comes PowerShell, then comes actual buttons. So
Yep.
watch for it. But yeah, this is, like I said, little things like this. Maybe it's not a single barrier to Teams usage, but it can be one of those little things, those death by a thousand cuts where someone's like, I don't want to use Teams because I can't rename or delete the general channel. Can't do this, can't do that. So I'm really happy that Microsoft is listening. I remember long ago, this was years ago, they did a survey about this feature. If we gave you this ability, would you want it? If it, what would the expectation be? So some of these things may have a slower burn than others, but their development teams are working at all times, and even for things that we've been requesting for from day one are showing up. Maybe it will take a few years, but they just got to figure out the right way to implement it.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. We all that work in Microsoft live in a Microsoft Teams lifestyle, and
Yeah,
anytime they make a change to Teams, it has generally been a favorable one. I
yeah,
honestly can't remember one that was poor. Maybe you could say the rollout of the new Teams was a little poor, but that was because they kind of rolled it out early, made it feel like it was ready, and it just was not ready. But I've been living
right.
on the new Teams now since I think August of last year. I've been living on the new Outlook since I think August of
Mhm.
September last year. So these things are iterative; they change over time. It's cloud-based services, everybody. That's the way that it works. So
Right.
things are going to change. Things that you like may go away, but at the same point, they're always innovating and putting new features in
Yeah.
and keeping us on our toes, right?
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to, I think the the transition from teams to new teams, little rocky at times. The transition from Outlook to new Outlook, my hope is that it becomes again, they've packaged up those things that they've, kind of takeaways, lessons learned, and will give it to us as we're all working towards new Outlook, which is honestly a seismically huge deal. I don't want to downplay it. Again, we've Scott and I've been fielding questions on classic Outlook versus new Outlook for the moment that the switch appeared.
Yep.
Um, and I can see reasons why on both sides, but I will put it this way. It really is more of it's not a yes or no question now. It's the a scale tipping. So new Outlook versus classic Outlook used to be like this. Now it's a little bit, it's tipping more and more to, the more features that they add to new Outlook, there becomes less and less of a reason to stay on classic Outlook. And some of the reasons that one might stay on classic Outlook are for legacy features that are, again, we kind of have we're I don't know about you, Scott, but I just seen that divide, sort of like the legacy kind of feature
Yep.
world versus the newer, more nimble kind of cloud-based
It's the
world.
it's those COM add-ons, Holly. Those developers are gonna death grip those as long as they can.
Don't get me started on the macros and all of that type of stuff. I get it. I get it. But it is just one of those things where, like, it's new outlook, and that's probably a really big lesson in a lot of this, and sort of like seeing the way that Teams is being developed and the way that new Outlook is being developed. New Outlook is going to have the same development cycle as something like Teams, which is very frequent, you know,
Hmm.
work because there's not going to be three versions that they have to, manage. Teams has one version. It's like Teams, whether you're in the web, whether you're on a Mac, whether you're on a Windows computer, it's the same app. And Outlook is not that right now. So if you think about how you've used Outlook as part of Microsoft 365, it did get updates, but not very often. Now,
Yep.
those things that we've been waiting possibly decades to be different in Outlook are headed our way. I'll give the whole thing on like work hours, right? Where if you go to your calendar options to set your work hours, that's new. It's updated,
Yeah. And
it's
it integrates with Microsoft Places coming later this year.
I know, it's like see it like
They're
trust
thinking
me,
ahead. They know what the roadmap
new
looks
out
like. Got these things layered out.
I know. I mean, I hear. I take arrows and slings for new Outlook. I get it. It's different, but I'm telling you, like it might not. Maybe it's not better today, but it's gonna get better and better and better and better, and quickly
Yep.
will overtake classic Outlook for feature set.
Okay, Holly. Well, thanks again for coming on the show this week. It's good that
Of
you were
course.
able to get back, and thanks to the audience for tuning in. We're very excited to actually be back. July was very busy. A lot of stuff got shifted around. Customers always come first. We had the CrowdStrike incident that kind of screwed up travel for me and for others out there. One note that I kind of wanted to note that at the beginning of July, like right as we went on break, for those that haven't seen it, we did put out a new tech tip earlier this month about Microsoft Loop and Copilot integration. So if you haven't seen it yet, go ahead and check that out. And again, I'll put it up in the top left corner, top right corner of the video, depending on what type of device you're
Mhm.
looking at. And then we'll also put it in the show notes as well. If there were any announcements today that you want to dig in a little bit further on, or any news that you want to know more about, as always, we try and make those available in the show notes as they come up. If your organization is interested in using or is already using Microsoft 365 and you need help implementing or managing services that we talked about on the show today or ones that are coming down the line, you can contact Virteva by emailing us at letstalk@virteva.com or by visiting our website at www.virteva.com. And again, if you made it this far, please don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons. It really helps the channel grow. Till next time, everyone, take it easy.